So welcome to episode 7 of Recall Japan. I'm Kevin, and with me is Josh. So Josh, what have you been up to these past week or two?
Hey everyone, it's good to be back. I've been in Ireland for the past couple of weeks. I went there with my brother and my dad, and I had an opportunity to go there for a family reunion. So we stayed in a small county in Donegal, where we stayed in a town of 2,000 people, and I'd say probably close to half the people there in that town I was somehow related to.
Okay. Well,
So
so
it
you're
was a lot of fun.
are you half Irish?
I am, yeah.
Oh,
So
okay, okay.
So my dad's full Irish. We went over there, and so technically it was a reunion of the Black Horse, or excuse me, of the Doherty clan. And even though my last name's Howard, over there I was known as a Black Horse Doherty, as a kind of a nickname because there's so many Dohertys in the town that you needed to come up with nicknames for every single sub branch of the family. So there's like the Pauls, the Newmans, the Organs. I'm sure there was a bunch more that I don't remember, but I was a Black Horse Doherty. So.
Okay.
Just a little bit of a fun fact. What about you, Mr. Kevin? How have you been
Um,
the past couple of weeks?
I've been pretty good. Well, I'm checking the stream audio real quick
Oh.
because your microphone's cutting. It's like a little bit buzzy. Yeah, it's a little bit buzzy.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I got a fan pointed at me, so I can point it away a
Okay, it's
little
like
bit.
staticky at times.
Alright, let me know if that helps at all.
I think it's your mic. You might want to plug it in and out real
Oh,
quick.
sure. One sec.
Yeah, when you're using your webcam mic, the buzzing sound goes away.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Is this
Okay,
better?
yeah, that's better. That's fine. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure it wasn't my computer. So I was just
Yeah,
checking
no
the
worries.
audio. Okay, because my headset sucks a little bit, but yeah, I've been
Isn't that
pretty
what people are
good.
coming here for?
I'm using a. I have a nice mic, but I have a cheapo headset, so it's really like weird. And plus, I don't think my microphone's set up properly. But I've been good. I've been watching a lot of the LGL games. I've been complaining on Twitter about the LGL a lot. I've been complaining on stream, doing VOD reviews. So I've been watching a lot of these games, and when I watch like in depth, I feel like notice a lot more like after watching it a second time. Because I once watch it live, then I go back, I'm like, oh, let's watch it again. And then now that I
Yeah.
have like the timeline, I'm like, okay, how did this team do well? How did this team like fail? And it's been really interesting. Like I feel it's like an eye-opening experience. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's like one of the first
it's
times I've
pretty
done
cool.
this.
I
Mhm.
mean, Kevin's been putting up a couple of videos recently and is planning to do a little bit more, mostly in Japanese for any of our viewers if you want to learn a little bit, understand a little bit more of the higher level of the Japanese League of Legends. It's a great series to watch. I would watch more of it if I understood nearly as much of it, but
I'd be down to do it in English because I mean English is my first language, so I'd probably be able to explain a lot more. I've
yeah, they
been
won't
getting a
flame
lot of
you for all
comments
the
in
bad
Japanese
Japanese.
saying that like because the way I speak is very like informal.
Aggressive.
So yeah, and aggressive. So they're like, oh, you should say it like this. Because in English you say like, oh, he couldn't get the kill, but in Japanese it's like, oh, he couldn't defeat that person. And I've been saying like, oh, you couldn't kill him, you couldn't do this. So everyone's like, no, say defeat. So, but I was listening to a Japanese stream and they say like they couldn't get kiru in like katakana speaking, like robotic speaking. So I've been using that a little bit. I've been watching the Japanese casters a lot, trying to copy how
Yeah,
they speak.
there you
They all say
go.
gold, like instead of like money,
Yeah. Oh, I
3,000
definitely
gold.
noticed that.
So
It's
it's
always they definitely have a couple of very unique things that they do that you don't
yeah,
see in any other language as far as I'm aware. But
yeah.
we can have a much bigger talk on how to cast in Japanese at a later time if
Okay.
anybody actually wants to learn a little bit more about that. We got stuff to talk about.
Hmm.
Nap's back in the
Yeah.
LJL. He's back from college. I don't know if his semester, quarter, whatever system, they're done with that. But he's back in the
Um.
LJL and he's playing for CGA.
Yeah. Apparently his grades weren't good enough, so he had to take a break to boost up his grades. So I was like, okay, like a pro player has to take time off for like school. Okay, I can understand that. What I feel bad about is that Grendel, the former top laner, he made a tweet talking about how he was really sad because he felt like he was getting bullied. So people on Twitter speculated that it was like Hachamecha bullying Grendel, because for some reason Hachamecha has like a toxic background, or he's toxic in solo queue, so they just
Mm.
assume that he's toxic in the team. But from my understanding, it was like the public saying, "Oh, Grendel's not good. Where's Nap? We need Nap to win the LGL." So he felt really bad that he role swapped, went to top lane. Now that Nap's back, he's out of the team. He's going to become a manager, which I thought was kind of like, I felt bad. I thought he should like at least compete for a spot on the support, back on support, because he was their starting support, and Achamomo just gets to walk right back in, or gets to walk in, take his job, and Grendel's now essentially jobless. So I felt bad for Grendel, because I think Nap is the
Yeah.
better option anyway. So
I mean, I am definitely a Grendel apologist. I kind of always have been. I think he recognized what he needed to do very well in order to get CGA to win games. Right? He was literally your top lane autofilled support, or other way around, support autofilled top lane, and he played that. He played a lot of the Sejuani, the Nico, things that you can't really lose super heavily on, and just went even and didn't lose super hard, so that the rest of the map could do really well.
Hmm.
And honestly, now that Nap's back, yeah, they played up against V3, who is another one of the top teams in the LJL, so it's not the best point of comparison, but Nap was playing to win the lane, and he did fairly well up against Paz, who is well known as a good top laner. But it definitely changes the dynamic of the team quite a bit when you don't have the same kind of sturdy rock up at the top lane as you used to.
hmm yeah, I mean, it's a good and bad thing to have another way of playing. Because now it's like, now that Nap you can play through top, it's like, okay, now the rest of the team is like, what will they do with that? But it's like, before it's like you had one playstyle, you had one option. So they would just like practice that one option. They're really good at that one option. But if teams are able to like counter it, then your team would be in trouble. But if teams wouldn't be able to counter, then there's no need to find another playstyle. But now it's like, oh, but you can play through top. Why don't we try? So the whole team has to learn. It's like, okay, now we have another playstyle. We're not playing through like Art and Achamomo. We're playing through Nap, and that can't be a good and bad thing. But so far, I think it's been pretty fine. I think they're like doing a pretty good job playing through that top lane to an extent.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
still
I think
think,
it's
like,
been
yeah.
fine. I think what I really like about it is looking at how the team was before Nap came back. Even though they were probably, they're definitely a strong argument for them being the best team in the LJL, I still thought that DFM would have more international success if it came down to it, simply because Crest Gaming it could only really play the one way, just like you're saying.
Mhm.
Right. And so other teams would punish Grendel super hard, where they won't be as likely to do that against Nap. But it just means it just needs to be shown that they can still crush through the other ways that they're playing. If Nap can pull himself back a little bit and they just let the rest of the map win like it often has, then I think they're still a good team. I mean, they're still at the very top of the league. So I'm curious to see what it's going to end up doing in the long run. I do like that Nap is back, and I really hope that these guys do well, because they've finally been giving Detonation Focus Me real competition.
Yeah. I'm happy that he's back, and they seem to be doing well. So I'm excited to see where they go in the next few weeks. If they can actually like level up and bring that bring Crest Gaming to hopefully a good maybe either finals or semifinals, or even like world's performance if they actually do manage to win. So
I'll be honest, there's a small part of me that would be sad if Detonation Focus Me didn't go to Worlds. Simply because
Mhm.
there's such a long history of DFM, Rampage, DFM, Pentagram, and that's like really all the international scene has ever seen coming from Japan. So I'd be a little bit sad, but it's also exciting to see a new team finally rise up.
yeah,
So
yeah. For me, it shows growth in the region. Like, because I always say that if you look at any other region, you always see like new faces, new names, like new players. Whereas
Flash
Japan,
Wolves.
well, Flash Wolves, yeah, but they would. So that's why I never thought like LMS was like a top tier region, because they would always send Flash Wolves, Sword Art, Karsa, and Maple, and then sometimes the AD carries like Betty, and like before that was like I don't remember. That was so long. Oh, NL. That's what his name was.
Yeah.
And so it always like one or two members change, but like the core wouldn't change. And Flash Wolves would either make it out of groups and lose in playoffs, or they would not make it out of groups. Whereas like if you look at like China, Korea, Europe, maybe NA, but like most of like the top regions, like the regions that you think of that can win worlds, you always see like a bunch of new players that like can prove like you don't need to be a veteran, like having like long place experience isn't that important. Like we're new, we're talented, we can win. But like in LGL, it's always the same five players. Maybe one player changes. Like for example, if Evie didn't go, it was Paz. Then Paz would come back in. It's like it's really weird. Like they'd swap in top laners or. So I think that if Crest Gaming does win, it kind of shows that like the LGL is improving. Like a group of like random players that no one's ever heard of can win and can go to Worlds. I don't think the league is set up for them to go to Worlds. It's really heavily DFM favored.
Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed that we lost the Rift Rivals this last year for Japan because
Oh
it
yeah.
was one of the very few times where there's an opportunity to see what the Japanese teams look like compared
Mhm.
to some of the international teams. And there was like the weird thing where the China, Korea, Taiwan was mixed in with Garena. So now there's like four Korean teams, four Chinese teams, and then like two of each
Yeah,
from
to
Taiwan and
Vietnam and
Garena.
to
But that's
Taiwan.
still an
Yeah,
opportunity. Yeah.
yeah. It does kind of suck for the LGL because what these players need is like international experience. They need like best of five experience, and they're not really getting that. Like Dead Nation plays like two best of fives a year, so it's really hard for them to like prepare. Or the other teams only get to play like one maybe. And now that there's no relegations, most of the teams don't play a best of five ever. Like the amount of players in the LGL that have best of five experience is probably like maybe 10 or I guess now there's teams, so it's 15 teams technically, or 15 players get best of five experience. But it's really like
Yeah.
limited.
Yeah.
So
And the rest of the season is best of one too, so it's even just like best of series is just something that Japan doesn't do very often that I'd really like to see them do a little bit more. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think that's kind of enough on that. But
yeah,
talking about best of series, we got playoffs teams coming up. So if you've been paying attention to the LJL recently, there are still 2 weeks left, but we already know that all of our playoff teams are already locked in. Detonation Focus Me, Crest Gaming Act, and V3 Esports all going to playoffs no matter what. It doesn't matter. I mean, they could lose the rest of their games, they're still going to make their way there.
Isn't that exciting? It's only these still have 2 more weeks of pointless games. Like it was pretty much locked in from like week 8, just because of the
Yeah.
limited amount of games there are, and not limited amount of games. It's the limited amount of playoff spots. So they play 21 best of ones, which is like an insane number in my opinion, and only 3 of those 8 teams get to go to playoffs, which is like disappointing. I made an entire video about how that's like really dumb, but yeah. So the top 3 teams, well, V3 I think should be third place unless if some weird thing happens where Crest loses like 4 games and Dead Nation also
Yeah.
loses like a bunch of games, which is
I mean,
highly unlikely.
looking at the rest of the schedule, DFM definitely has the hardest schedule left because they still
Mhm.
have to play both Crest and V3 over
Yeah.
the next 2 weeks. Whereas realistically, I mean, Crest plays USG, Sengoku, DFM, and Axes. So, like, if they drop more than one game over the next 2 weeks, I would be very surprised.
Yeah.
V3 is in a very similar situation where they play Burning Core, Axes, Rascal Jester, and Detonation Focus Me. So if they drop more than one game over the next 2 weeks, I would be very surprised. So maybe V3 overtakes DFM, but even then, I'm pretty sure we're pretty much locked. And
Mhm.
where we're at, the only thing that might change is DFM might get the first place bye if
Yeah.
they beat Crest Gaming Act.
Yeah, if Crest Gaming and DFM wins every other game and DFM beats Crest, then they would win the tiebreaker scenario and get first place. Because they
Yeah.
have a 2-1 lead over. They would have a 2-1 lead over Crest Gaming. Yeah, they would. So it's possible, but let's pretend that this is the like lock in for seeding. Let's talk about V3 first. So, what do you think about V3 esports? Like after watching them play for like 17 games, how do you feel about this team of like players?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing I'd want to start with is I was impressed with Revel's prediction and all the other casters when they did the kind of reveal of all the teams for this split of LJL, and all of them were really looking at V3 doing quite well. And I wasn't a believer at the beginning of the split.
Hmm.
Now, I think this is a team that has lots of experience and can also really pop off in a number of roles, but is definitely a little bit less consistent than the other two teams that are currently looking at playoffs. I mean, Baby in particular is a player. The first time I saw his Gragas, I was like, "Holy moly, this guy is a freaking beast!" And then the next time I saw his Gragas, I was like, "Did you uninstall League of Legends since the last time I saw you play this game?" He just like missed every single cast and had absolutely zero impact on the game. So
Hmm.
that said, they can definitely. I think they can beat the other teams, but they don't have enough early strength in the game, so they tend to have to come up against Crest Gaming Act and DFM with a bit of a deficit. If they can fix that, they're golden. But they got to fix that.
Yeah. I've I feel like V3 is very strong and weak at the same time. Like their bot lane, like Itoimashi and Vivid, can be strong, but it can also be very weak, where they're losing, like CS, they're losing lane advantage to like Keymaker and NT, or they're losing to like Otiki Reina. Like some of the bot lanes that you don't think as strong as like Itoimashi and Vivid would be, but sometimes they do really well and they start beating like Art and Achamomo, who have been doing really well this season. So I feel like their bot lane can be inconsistent at times, and Ace to me, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think he's been really good this year. He's been improving a lot, and he has shown that he can carry games. He can play like uh, unique champions like assassins or like control mages. Baby is the biggest question mark in my opinion. Like sometimes Baby is like AFK. Sometimes he's ganking a lot. Sometimes he's like, I don't know. I think the most solid player on this team would have to be Paz, and maybe Vivid. I've seen Vivid do some good things, like
Yeah,
their
I've
game
been
against
impressed with the
Crest.
split.
I thought Vivid was the MVP of the game. Like he had some nice saves. He had some nice time catch ults, and I feel like that won them the game, or helped them put their advantage to a bigger advantage. Whereas it would have been like a 1-for-1 trade, Vivid would flash in and save someone. There would be a 1-for-0 trade, and then they would be able to use that slight advantage to take out towers and to win the
Yeah,
game.
yeah. So I think a lot of their performance will come down to how Baby is playing on the day of, and also Paz. Paz is a fairly emotional player in ways that a lot of LJL players really aren't. But I mean, just looking at, so I didn't even pay attention to this as much because I was in Ireland, but just looking at the last 2 weeks when Baby was playing as Karthus, he has one game against Crest Gaming Act. He goes 6-0-8.
Hmm.
And then within 2 weeks, he also plays Karthus against Detonation Focus Me and goes 0-7-1.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Right?
definitely Baby.
That's definitely Baby, right? And then there's the Gragas where he plays 7-1-7. The game that I looked at was like, wow, he's just like not doing anything. He ends up going 2-4-7, which isn't as bad. It doesn't look bad on paper. It looks pretty acceptable. But if you had gone back and watched the plays, it was not. It was not a decent performance whatsoever. So
Hmm.
I mean, I'm looking at Ace at the same time, and you take a look at most of his scores. He's got a lot of relatively low deaths, but also a lot of relatively low kills because he's very much a supportive player on just about everybody that isn't exactly Jace,
Yeah,
right? Where he tends to pop off when he's playing the Jace as he starts to roam around quite a bit. But everything else, he does his job. And that's really all you can expect and ask of somebody who's relatively young up against a region that is now actually has quite a few good mid laners.
hmm yeah. I don't know. Like week 8, they lost to Axis and Sengoku, which I thought was like, oh my god, this team is so bad. But then the next day they play against Crest Gaming and they beat Crest Gaming, so it's like, oh okay, I don't understand that logic. top team loses to Axis and Sengoku, but is also able to beat Crest Gaming. I guess they're just like trolling, or they weren't. Because that was also a super week, so maybe they weren't as focused or prepared. Because they had to play 4 games in 2 days, so that's a lot of games. So maybe they just didn't care about Axis and Sengoku, and that just bit them in the butt.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Sengoku started looking a little bit better as the course of the season went on, but yeah, V3 super unpredictable. I don't know if anybody saw, but I made like a alignment chart for all the different teams, and there's a reason why I put V3 as kind of the chaotic good team, is because you don't know which version of the team is going to come out, but they're always going to try their best, and they're, I don't know, that's kind of just it. Like, they're going to do their best, and it's going to be like all over the place. You never know which version of the team is going to actually come out and play on that day. So see if they do well. I like them to do well. There's a lot of players on this team that I really like.
They have a lot of playoff experienced players, so
yeah, definitely.
Hopefully that can carry them and give them a slight advantage over some like Crest or Denation.
Yeah. I mean, well, let's talk about the other teams real quick before we come back to that. Detonation Focus Me is currently in second, 15-3. They are half a game behind Crest Gaming at the moment. I mean, this team looks the same as it always has. Really. I mean, I don't think there's been a whole lot of changes from Detonation Focus Me from last split in particular. They have the exact same roster. They tried playing a couple games with Ramune at the beginning of the split, and it didn't go particularly well, and I don't believe he's played any game since then.
No, he hasn't. It's always been Seros. So, yeah, this team's kind of sad because they've shown no growth at all. They've played the exact same style since, as long as, like, I don't know, since they came together. They haven't really done anything that's different. They tried to do something different with Ramune, but in the end, they just were like, they lost games, so they're like, okay, we can't lose. Just put in Seros, just play the same style, make him play Karma, Heimerdinger, Ziggs, and then we'll just be safe. It's like, I don't know, like if Detonation goes to Worlds, I'm not that excited because they might win, they might get out of the like little group thing and go against a best of 5 against a 3rd place region, but or 3rd place from a region, but they're not gonna win that best of 5. Like, they just have one playstyle, and it's fairly obvious that Seros' limited champion pool is gonna hurt them.
I didn't realize this. This is kind of a funny fact. I'm looking at Seros' stats throughout the split. He played one game where, he was playing something other than Heimerdinger, Azir, Karma, and Ziggs, and it was on Syndra, and that was the same game where he didn't go Comet Inspiration as his roots. Literally every other game he got Comet Inspiration.
I didn't know that. But
I didn't realize that either. It's just kind of a funny thing because, like,
hasn't he also played Azir games?
Yeah, he's played like 5 Azir games. He's gone Comet Inspiration every single time.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I didn't know that. But,
yeah, right. Because Azir is a character where you see a lot of lethal tempo, a lot of electrocute based on the style of the player, and it's very obvious now that Seros has one style that he likes to play, and I mean, he's good at it. He is really good at it. He holds the lane fairly even, but just kind of a fun fact.
I mean, he's the Japanese Kian. Just does nothing.
Exactly.
And tries to distract
he neutralizes his lane opponent.
Yeah.
To put it a little bit nicer.
I mean, like, I've always, like, shitted on Seros, like, for the longest time. Like, people, like, I've been streaming a lot in Japanese, so the Japanese fans would come and attack me, saying that, like, Seros is very good. What are you talking about? Look at his champion pool, and they pull up his stats, and it's like, look how many champions he can play. Like, oh, he's played like 4. Zed one time. I'm like, oh, what team did he play against? Like, oh, a bottom tier team? It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, him playing Azir, like, yeah, he does play Azir, but who does he play Azir against? And it's always like Rascal Jesters, Axis, like teams that aren't good. When he plays against USG, he's always playing like Ziggs, Karma, Heimerdinger, because he knows Dasher's gonna destroy him if he plays something else. Like if you look at the stats, like yeah, like over the course of a year he has a wide champion pool, but it's always like one game. It's always against a bottom tier team. When his team needs to win, he will pull out a Heimdallr, Ziggs, or Karma. Like his
Yeah.
champion pool is very limited. He's not a very like yeah, okay, he's good on those champions, but like against like good players, like I don't think he's that great. Like I feel
Yeah.
like
I mean,
he's in the middle or bottom and towards the mid laners in the LGL.
yeah, and it's also worth noting that the one game that he's lost this split was on Azir versus Dasher.
Exactly.
It was
I was about to
it
say
was
that.
the game where USG kind of popped off and totally took control of it, and Dasher and Tussle really made Seros look pretty relevant that game.
Yeah.
So it does worry me. I was definitely looking at a lot of the games last year when they went up against EDG, and again they had the very specific style where they played things like Galio and Tom Kench, and then about 10 minutes in, they would roam towards the top half of the map and get like some kind of 5v3 around the Rift Herald, and hopefully that was enough to propel them through. They played Heimerdinger every single time, and I don't remember who EDG's mid laner was,
Scout.
but they played, yeah, Scout. He played like Syndra, and he made Saros' Heimerdinger look kind of silly. So I think DFM is exactly as good, or maybe a little bit better than they were last split, simply because they've had a little bit more time to perfect what they're working on. But that's really about it. They have a couple of styles that they can play. They have a bunch of players they can play through. They're really reliant on Utapone and Evie in particular to have good games and really carry through and build pressure so that Saros can afford to play his neutralized enemy mid laner style.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically sits around the mid lane doing nothing, just farming, and it works against bad teams because, like, a bad team might, like, a bad mid laner might make a bad roam and not get a kill bot lane. While you're not getting a kill bot lane and you're missing all that CS, Saros is just, like, pushing into your tower and gets, like, a free plating or two. So that's why Dead Nation really succeeds well against, like, poor teams. But when you watch, like the EDG game, or even like at MSI against the Turkish, no, it was the Russian team. No, it'd have to be like a Turkish team. But like they would pick that playstyle, and then the other team would be able to out rotate them and basically like beat them at their own game because they wouldn't make bad roams.
Yeah.
So I'm worried about Dead Nation going into not playoffs, but if they do win playoffs, I think that's the end of their journey.
Yeah, I mean, they'll go to Worlds. Depending on what the play-in stage actually looks like this year, they might do as well as they said, but I think they'll run into another third place team from one of the major regions. And I'm trying to think. So you have Korea, who is probably sending some mix of like SKT, Griffin, and then the rest of it's honestly kind of a mess.
I mean, based off circuit points, it might be Griffin, or no, it might be SKT, but just because of how the circuit point system works. But right now, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of like strong teams like in every region, including except for maybe NA, because NA is kind of like.
Oh, that's a good one. All right, we'll get to that later. But
Okay.
the question will be: do you think the best LJL team, the team that wins playoffs, can beat CLG?
No. Okay, it was Vega, the Russian team, the Vega Squadron.
Yeah.
Okay. Then it was Russian. Okay. So yeah, I mean, like NA looks bad, but their competition's a little bit better compared to the LGL. So it's like you could say like X team has really good stats, but you have to see like where those stats are coming from. Like yes, Saros has a really insane stats on like Azir. Okay, who is he playing Azir against? Oh, he's playing against like Garrieru. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, yeah. Well, I'd hope he'd have good stats against like bottom teams if he's like only playing it like that. Like for example, like you don't say this player is really good because his like Like if someone plays like Sona mid, but he only plays it against the 8th place team, then yes, his Sona mid stats would look insane. He have 100% win rate, really good KDA, but that doesn't mean he's a good Sona player. You have to see like the context of everything.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
let's talk
we'll
about the
get back
last
to them in
team.
just a moment.
Let's
We'll have
talk
to
about
compare them,
Crest.
but yeah, Crest Gaming Act. You can go ahead and start.
Okay. I think Crest Gaming is very good, but they also have a problem with they have a limited play style where they play towards mid and late game. Where even though like Luna can play well, like he has shown pretty good performances, they like to put him on like mid to late game champions, especially like the Vladimir, where like even if they lose the early game and they're like down a lot of gold, somehow they're amazing team fighting. Like Luna comes in with this crazy Vladimir, just kills everyone, and then they somehow turn around the game. So I think that's their problem, which is a good. It's like a very North American playstyle where it's like, oh, we're not aggressive, we're just gonna farm, and then mid to late game where we have a lot of gold and nothing's happened. Now we'll fight you. Now we'll play aggressive and try to win. And
Yeah.
in playoffs or in like just like the peak matches, everyone plays a little bit safer. No matter who you are, but majority of the players will play safe because they're too scared to take that. Like, oh, they don't want to be the one that lost the team the game, so they're playing very safe. They don't go for crazy dives. They try to trade a little bit. No one ever tower dives too much. So I feel like that playstyle will help out Crest Gaming a lot during playoffs.
Yeah, I mean that summarizes a lot of my thoughts looking at Crest Gaming Act. You don't have a whole lot of, I like to call it clutch factor coming out from this team. Art and Luna do have some level of clutch factor where they can just pop off in ways that you weren't necessarily expecting them to do. But oftentimes when they have those clutch games, it happens relatively early on. I mean, we saw a little bit of this when Luna was playing Kiana against, who was that? I think it was against Dasher and Unsold Stuff Gaming, where he just started getting solo kills on everyone he dashes forward. No, it was against Gariaru.
Oh, okay, that
That's the
explains
first
it.
time that he ended up doing it. Yeah, and he just kind of he jumps in and he just like 100 to zeros the Gariaru up against the wall, and it's like,
Mhm.
well, oh, he's dead now. And then there was no way in hell for them to come back. So
Mhm.
CGA really they can rely on Luna to pop off fairly early. Otherwise, they're kind of reliant on Art and Achamomo to create advantages in the bottom lane. But to go back, like I still think Achamomo had a really good season overall. I mean, yes, some of it was him getting carried by Art, but it's it does take two to tango, and he has shown that he can at least play two champions quite well. Right, the Yumi and the Lux.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
see that facial
No,
expression.
no,
You
no.
seem like you have some
I forgot
different-
about those two champions. I thought you were talking about the other two champions which you showcased, which is like Braum and Thresh. And that I was like, I don't know. But yeah, his Yumi, I guess his Yumi was good. And when Lux is OP, yeah, he played a very good Lux. I'll give you
Yeah.
that. Like, I think, I don't want to take away too much from Achamomo. So I'll give him that. Like, yes, he is a very good Lux and Yumi player. But the rest of his champion pool, I still think is a bit questionable.
Yeah, I mean, we saw his Braum up against V3 this last week, and it was. I mean, CGA was systematically dismantled, so I can't say it's entirely his fault. But his Braum has just been okay. His Thresh has been okay. His Nautilus has been okay.
Yeah.
Right, none of it has been standout in the ways that the Yumi he was playing early on in the split really looked when he was, he always had the Sivir Yumi lane. So it's not as good as you might expect, but I think it should be good enough. And going back to how you were saying this, the slower paced games really are something that I think is going to hurt DFM as a team, especially in comparison to some of the other two teams that they're going to be playing up in playoffs. So with that, let's start talking about how these teams actually match up, I think. So first off, as the standings currently are leaning, it means that Detonation Focus Me is going to be playing V3 in the semifinals. What are your thoughts on that right now?
Well, if that does happen, I don't think V3 has a chance of winning. I think V3 is very reliant on winning lane, winning game. Like their most recent win against Crest was because they had really good advantages early game with the Karthus ult and being able to like pick off the team using their teleport advantage properly. So I think that's how they won. But when they don't get those early kills or early advantages, or like a gank doesn't go well, I think V3 falls behind really hard. And because of that, I think across the board, the Nation should have better players in almost every position. The only argument you could make is probably mid and support, but Saros has that playoff like lockdown. I don't think he has performed worse in playoffs from time to time. That was mostly against like Ramune. Ace has never been in a best of 5 scenario as far as I can tell, except for I believe he was in playoff once in like the relegation series, but he was playing ADC and I believe he got 3-0'd that time. So yeah, it'll be I think it'll be one-sided. I don't see them winning
Yeah.
this game.
Do you think V3 will win a game over the best of 5, or do you think it's just an easy 3-0?
It's possible, but I wouldn't put money on it. Like if I had to put like money and like guess what's gonna happen, I would say it would be a 3-0. Maybe V3 can win the first game where Detonation is, because the first game is usually like a little bit coin flippy. It's usually the first game or the third game where it's like the first game they let both teams have whatever they want, see what the dynamic would be, or the third game when a team's up 2-0, then they kind of don't take it as seriously, a little bit trolly, and then they like might lose that game, but they still might win. Like usually if you watch Detonation, they win like 2-0, and then the third game is a little bit chaotic. But like for example, last season it was a little bit chaotic against USG, but they managed to bring that back and still win. So
Yeah.
I don't think V3 can beat Detonation.
Yeah. I think V3 will take one game. I think it's going to be probably a 3-1 in DFM's favor as well. But I think a large part of it is just kind of the way that professional best of 5s work, where you alternate side selection.
Mhm.
Does mean that V3 will get to play at least one game on the side that they want to be playing on. And talking a little bit more about how the games tend to go a little bit slower. We've been seeing that V3 actually has an insanely good win rate, specifically blue side. Like they're actually 10-1 this split, and if they
Okay.
can leverage that with the extra, normally I'd say this comes with the extra safety that's available to them in the bot side. Like that's what you might expect. Like if Yutori Moyashi can get to the later game relatively uncontested, he should be in a pretty good spot. But I think it actually comes from their ability to make the opposing top laner really unsafe. If he has a good game, and if Baby also has a good game, can really shut down Evi. Whereas Yutori and Vivid can really kind of force a neutral lane against Utapon and Gang. And if they can do that, I think that's one of the ways that they get the game to go really long, go for such a long time that Yutori Miyashi has the time to farm up all of his items. And if they win a game, and I think they will, it's probably going to be that. They neutralize Evi fairly early, and then Yutori Miyashi is able to get all the gold, all the items that he needs in order to really affect the game.
Yeah, their best bet is it's probably that. Like
Yeah.
Baby has to have a really good performance, and Yutori Moishi has to be able to out team fight Utapon. But I feel like Utapon does a better job at that. And plus, I feel like they're stronger in the bot lane, so they should be able to win. Like, it's really hard for me to like see a vision where, like, obviously it's not impossible, but it's very unlikely. And because of that, like, I don't try to say like, oh, then it'll be 3-1. Like, I try to see like what's the percentage of them winning a game. So like statistically, like they should be unlikely to win a single. Like they should be able to win a game against DFM. So that's why I would want to say it's 3-0, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was 3-1.
Yeah.
But I think Detonation would win in the end.
Yeah. I would be very surprised if V3 Esports was able to take down Detonation Focus Me in a best of 5. Simply due to the inconsistency that V3 has shown. We already talked a fair bit on that, so I don't think there's a whole lot more to say. We're on the same page here.
Okay, so let's
But
talk about the supposed finals then.
Yeah, Detonation Focus Me going on to play up against Crest Gaming Act. Now, I kind of want to hold off just a little bit. The first time these teams played against each other was it was like in week 1 or 2. Yeah, it was in week
Yeah.
1 actually, where Detonation Focus Me was playing Ramune still up against Crest Gaming Act, and CGA won that one. They had a recent game as well. I
Yeah.
think it was a couple weeks back. Maybe I think it was during the Super Week. Actually, I'd have to double
Um.
check. But regardless of what it was, DFM won the second time that they played, and then they have one more time that they're going to be playing up against each other in the last week, right before playoffs is happening. So we'll get to see this rematch a little bit, get to recalibrate at that point. But looking at it right now, what are your thoughts?
That nation are the favorites coming into this, but I don't think you'll. I think Crest Game will have a better chance at beating that nation than V3 does, because during the regular season, I've been pretty happy with Crest Gaming. I think they've been pretty clean. They've been pretty consistent. They seem to know their strengths and weaknesses fairly well. So I would put Crest Gaming as the favorites coming into this. But you know, it's always that like solo queue is different from scrims, different from regular season, different from playoffs, especially like the finals. And they are going to be playing it in like a small stadium, so all that pressure will be on the players. You know, they'll feel like it's a very unique environment to be on like a final stage, and I feel like Dead Nation has the more experienced players, and they should be able to handle that pressure. Whereas like Crest Gaming doesn't really have that experience, like except for like the last season best of five match and relegation matches. They don't really have that kind of pressure, and it's always done
Yeah.
like this. It was always held at the same studio, but now it's gonna be held at a different studio, so that'll be a little bit of a mental change. So I would say the nation should win, but I would say it's a pretty close match, 3-2 or 3-1. I don't know how much that playoff thing will affect Crest Gaming, so that's why I'm not too sure.
Yeah. Uh, I think it's also going to be a 3-1 in Detonation Focus Me's favor looking at this again. I mean, you kind of touched on it already the last time that we saw CGA playing a best of 5. They played up against Unsold
USG.
Stuff Gaming. Yeah, and they got destroyed.
Yeah.
It wasn't even close. But now almost all of these players have at least that last playoff set underneath their belt. They have a little bit more experience. But my big thing is it's really going to come down to the fact Nap is going to be playing the top lane to win in a way that Grendel never was and or never will. And Nap is just not as good as Epi. Like I don't think there's a
Hmm.
real. I don't think that's an I don't think that's a controversial statement to say that Evi is the best top laner in Japan, bar none.
Yeah.
And he's going to beat Nap most of the time. And so with that in mind, it really gives a potential weak point for Crash Gaming to kind of crumble a little bit. I mean, Grindel would eventually lose to Evi all the time, no matter what.
Yeah.
Nap isn't necessarily always going to, but if he loses, it's way more catastrophic. He's going to be playing on things like the Aatrox, like the Renekton, that if they get put behind, stop being effective champions.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. I don't think Nap is bad by any means, but I
No,
think
I don't think that
there
either.
is a mismatch in the top lane in terms of like just player strength. But I think there's a world where Nap can win top lane, can lose top lane, and also can go even. Whereas Grendel, there's no world where Grendel's winning top lane. There's a world where he's going even, and there are also worlds where he's losing top lane. So I would rather have that gamble where Nap can pop off rather than a lane that's can only go even at best.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I
yeah,
agree. I think it's going to be a lot of focus on how all of the lanes do early on in the game because I think realistically speaking, you're looking at the best top laner versus a good top laner. You're looking at probably the second best mid laner against a solid mid laner, and then the bottom lane is really where things are going to be super sluggy. Art and Achamomo versus Utapon and Gang, like this is going to be where the games are made or where you make or break it, right? You're gonna have so much blood going on down here. I'm expecting a lot of Achama-Cha and Steel to be trying to pay attention to this lane in order to get your ADC ahead. Because if you can do that, I think the rest of the game is fairly easy.
Yeah. But it should be an interesting finals either way. Hopefully Crest doesn't have a bad performance because of the playoff situation. Hopefully they can break through that, but I wouldn't like bet on it. It's very hard for players to get through that playoff jitters on their first or second time, especially with like a completely new scenario. They've never experienced playing on a big stage, whereas some of the Detonation players have. They've been to Worlds as well, so it's like, yeah, they're gonna have to go through a lot to win. It's just that simple.
Well, Kevin, we are kind of running up on our hour limit that we always tend to look at. We always go a little bit longer, but let's see if we can try and speed run a little bit the last part that we've been looking at. We wanted to come up with talk about not necessarily definitively who we want to give these accolades to, but just kind of looking at candidates for the all-pro team, the best player in every position, the rookie of the split, and the coach of the split. So I think the easiest way is just go this top to bottom.
Yeah.
Top lane. Is there anybody other than Evie that you think is even in contention for this spot?
Paz?
Yeah?
Yeah, it's only Paz. You can make you can make an argument for Paz, because I think Paz has shown pretty good performances in top lane. Evie, for some reason, wants to keep playing that Tahm Kench top lane, which does nothing. So you can make that argument.
He looks really good on it.
At times, but not always. He's like their most recent game where Detonation lost to, was it USG? I believe they were playing Tahm Kench top lane that game.
They were indeed.
So it is kind of like, it's a really weird, irrelevant pick in my opinion. But I think Evie is an overall better top laner than Paz, so we can just give it to Evie. I wouldn't fight you on that. I think Evie is better than Paz.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's an easy one. The next one is a little bit harder.
I think
going into
jungle's a little bit harder. Because I don't know. I didn't know who I would pick. To be honest,
I had 3 candidates that I was like, I would consider backing this person for the best jungler in Japan this split, and they were Steel, Tussle, and Baby.
Oh, Tussle? Oh, okay. Yeah. Tussle's one of my worst junglers right now.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think Tussle's good at all. I think Tussle's terrible. Okay, I actually had also 3. I had Blank, Steel, and Hachamecha. And I was also considering Once as an honorable mention. But now that's 4 and I have to cut down. So I just went with okay, well, who looks the most consistent for their team, or who does the best for their team? And I would have to say it's Steel or Once.
Yeah.
As terms of MVP candidates. Because Blank has really good performances too, but he also has really weird inty performances, mostly because his team is a lot worse. Whereas I feel like Once, his team is really bad, so he kind of stands out as the focal point where it's the team is moving around Once. So you can say Once is an MVP candidate. Hachamecha is kind of the team's, he's the team's bitch. He's like Bengi, so I don't know if I would want to give it to him, because he just seems to protect the solo laners. In my opinion, Bengi wasn't an MVP candidate for me, so I don't see why I would give it to someone that plays like him. And there's no real pop off junglers that want to win and that can also carry the game. So I would actually lean towards Steel, Blank, or maybe even Once, with Steel or Once being the better options.
I mean, I think if you're looking at carry junglers right now, that's part of why I was looking at Baby and Tussle. Tussle, I think, he's not back to where he was when I first started paying attention to the LGL when he was playing for Rampage.
Mm-hmm.
And he was kind of it's Rampage DFM. You had Steel versus Tussle, and Tussle was the super aggressive one who's going to be playing the Lee Sin and the Jarvan and always trying to make these early game plays. He's not doing that anymore, but he's making Dasher look better in a lot of ways. He's providing
Maybe.
enough
Mhm.
support there. Again, it's not super. I'm not super excited about it. Baby just has like these insane pop off games, right? So that's kind of like he's kind of like my Wyvern from last split,
Yeah.
where Wyvern just had these insane pop off games and he would make himself look insanely good, and Baby does kind of the same thing. So his peaks are super high. And it's also notable to me that Wyvern is not on either of our lists this split, simply because he has a better team around him.
Well,
Overall, slightly better,
when
but
I
he looks worse.
when I was seeing the VOD reviews, like I found a lot of dumb mistakes Wyvern did make. Like there's that infamous game where against Sengoku where they lost in 18 minutes. It was like I think it's the fastest LGL game in the history of the LGL. So Wyvern was legit inting. My MVP vote would have been Sengoku Wyvern that game. So it was like I've seen a lot of games where Wyvern's just straight up inting. Like he does a lot of dumb plays where he's not even
Yeah.
thinking, not even looking at the map. Like people were spotted on wards and he still went in knowing it was like a 1v2, and he went in, he immediately flashed out because he wasn't looking at the minimap, and it was really bad. And Baby,
He was hoping they weren't looking at the minimap either.
yeah, I guess. Maybe he's playing with his like headset off or something, or his minimap off. But after
Yeah.
watching it, there's like a lot of like really weird performances from these players. Or Blank doesn't have a team. He plays a really good early game, but it doesn't really matter. So and once does play well with his team, but if the team is like unable to beat the other team, it doesn't matter how well he plays, they'll still lose. Hachimecha does whatever the team asks. He's warding for the team, counter ganking, warding. Does whatever the team wants. Baby, he's either AFK or he's in your face. So I don't think Baby deserves it. Tussle, I think, loses USG more games than he helps them win. So I wouldn't give it to Tussle. And
Sure,
Steel does okay. Like he's not really he does help out, but the team is also really good. So how much of that is Steel compared to everyone else? So I had a
Yeah.
really hard time picking a jungle MVP candidate.
Yeah, I think both of us right now are kind of like, who's the
Like what's
best
MVP in
jungler
our
Japan?
minds?
Yeah,
It's really
you know,
hard.
who's the best jungler in Japan? It's just kind of like Steel, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, I mean,
All right.
I guess that one's really hard.
Yeah.
If I had to pick one, I might go with. It's still hard. I was gonna say Steel but I guess I'd have to say Steel, but I think Blank and Once can also be MVP candidate potentials. I won't really argue. I'd argue with other picks, but maybe Steel is the most consistent one out of all of them.
Fair. All right, mid lane. I have two candidates. I don't think it's a surprise who they are.
Okay, well, I'm surprised you have a second candidate. Let's hear this.
Dasher.
Mm-hmm.
He might be my favorite player in the LGL right now, and
Yeah.
Luna.
Oh, okay, Luna. Oh yeah.
I mean, Maple
Mine's-
Street already put it in the chat a little bit. Like, Saros is third in just about every stat behind Dasher and Luna. And Dasher single-handedly is pretty much keeping USG, like, something we talk about. Because he's just...
Yeah.
This guy is just nuts.
That guy is very good. Dasher, like, the reason why I would argue about that stat, saying like, oh, Saros is like really high. Well, his team is also winning a lot, so it boosts your stats a little bit. Dasher's team is terrible. Their team was like near the bottom of the rankings. Like only recently have they able to like push up to 5th place. But when his stats are like nearly the same as like a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd place team, I feel like that also kind of proves how insane of a player he is. Like he is solo killing players. Like obviously he gets like the counter pick most of the time, so he has an easier time. But the fact that USG is basically Dasher and like 4 other players kind of shows how much of a threat he is. Where if you don't respect him, like where Saros didn't respect Dasher and picked Azir, and he just got decimated in the mid lane, it kind of shows how much of a threat Dasher is, and that's why
Yeah.
I would feel like Dasher is the MVP by far.
Yeah, I mean, I agreed. I mean, I just think he's really, really good, and unless something drastic happens in the next like week or so, he's probably going to be receiving my MVP vote. Unofficial, of course. LGL
Unofficial.
doesn't give a shit what I have to say, but
Well, LGL just loves to give all the MVP votes to Damnation. It's also
Yeah, they
fan
really do.
voted, which is kind of weird. It's like, well, yeah.
oh really? I didn't know that.
Oh,
Okay.
there's because they always ask you to tweet and like
True.
who's your MVP of the game, and that adds up. And it's like, well, the people that fans like will win MVP more often than not. That's why you see Seros winning a lot because he has like one of the biggest fan base in the LGL, which just blows my mind. I'm just like, oh yeah, Seros playing Heimerdinger's Ziggs, what an MVP candidate. Well, we have
He's
Dasher
okay,
playing like Fizz, like he just like pulls Fizz out and just slams on tables like, look, this is my Fizz. You better respect it. I'm getting solo kills. Like Dasher is my MVP candidate locked in, and I will fight you to the death if you say otherwise. I think Luna is a very good mid laner. Like he is a good honorable mention, but I think Dasher can make some biggest standout performances. And whenever USG does win, it's mostly because of Dasher. I don't think I've ever watched a USG game where Dasher wasn't the front runner for MVP.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay,
With
I think
that
we
in
said
mind,
now. Let's go to
ADC.
ADC. Yeah. Well,
I,
I was
I
going
again have
to give it. You have two? Okay, I have two too.
I have two.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say-
I think they're the same ones. You want to say it at the same time?
Okay. Well,
3, 2, 1. Art and
Yutapon?
Yutapon.
Oh, I was gonna say Yutapon Art. Okay, we kind of got it backwards, but yeah, I was gonna say Art and Yutapon, but I feel like if I just had to like, it's really hard because they're both really good in different ways. Because MVP candidate.
I mean, one of the things that I think is a very easy thing to look at in terms of MVP candidates for ADC is just looking at what their damage share is on the team.
Mhm.
And, you know, I'm always gushing about how Dasher is absolutely nuts. He's got a 35.4% damage share for his team. Art has higher than that
Yeah.
on a team that, I mean, one, they never had a damage threat coming in from the top lane because they were playing with Grendel, so that kind of removes one player that's normally there. Hachamacha doesn't. I don't like Hachamacha. I don't like his playstyle. I can't
Mhm.
speak to him as a person at all, but he just, he's got these really low kill participation. His warding isn't particularly impressive, but he's definitely not a damage threat in most of his games. So Art looks really good. Like he's got the 35.7 and Yutapon's at the 29.7, but he's also competing with a couple more players, so it's like,
Yeah.
They both, like, Yutapon has more pop-off moments, but Art is super solid, and it's very rare to see a bad game from Art, whereas Yutapon, because he has those pop-off moments, sometimes the plays go wrong.
Yeah. I'd be fine giving it to Art, but I feel like they're very close. It depends what you value more in AD carry. Like, do you want someone that's like more safe and like conservative, but is also like because they funnel a lot of the farm into Art because you weren't going to give it to Grendel. Hachimetsu doesn't take a lot of farm, and like Luna does his own thing. Whereas like on DFM, Yutapon has to compete with Evi and Seros because Seros just plays farming machines all the time. So
Yeah.
I feel like that is also kind of in Yutapon's favor, where I think he has less gold overall, but is still able to do a lot of damage, which is also always a nice thing. And I feel like his positioning team fight is as good as Art. I've never really felt like whenever they would play against each other, I never felt like Art is destroying Yutapon or Yutapon's destroying Art. It's always been like, oh, they're pretty even. Like, oh, Yutapon got the outplay on this fight, just slight edge, and that was able to help them win, or vice versa. So
Yeah.
but
I
would
think
feel
it's the
like,
classic argument of, like, consistency versus peaks, right, between these two players. I'd be pretty happy giving it to either one. I'd also like to give a couple of other honorable mentions to Odigi and Yutori Miyashi for the split.
Okay.
I don't think they're MVP candidate,
Mhm.
but I think they are like definitely noteworthy players.
Maybe. I don't know. It's like I feel like there's a kind of big drop off after Itapon and
Yeah,
Art.
I
I think
agree.
my MVP candidate might be Art because it's like I don't really like giving all the MVP candidates to just one team. It kind of doesn't really make sense. Like, okay, so
Yeah,
if that nation has 5 MVPs, like how come they're not like winning all the games by like a huge margin? It's like there's obviously not every player is very good. So that's why like Steel is like kind of iffy. But like I think Art does a better job with the kind of materials he's required, like or materials that he's given. Like he's given a lot of resources, but he's able to turn that resource into like an advantage. And they do play around him a lot for a very specific reason. But I'd be fine with like Art getting the MVP. I think he kind of deserves it this season. He's very consistent. He's always doing damage. His team fighting position is very good. Sometimes, the other members sometimes faulty, so that's why he can look bad. But I've never really, maybe like one game, I felt like Art was the problem. But it's
yeah,
most of the time other players around him or the team decision making that was the problem, more so than Art being a problem.
yeah. I agree. Well, next we got support.
I
This
think
was
there's
also
only
a little bit hard.
two candidates, in my opinion.
You have two.
Yeah,
I think we probably have the same two then.
yeah, they're both Korean.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
they they've been the potential MVP candidates for support for the past like 3 years.
I just think that like like Japanese supports weren't that good this season. In my honest opinion, I think the best Japanese support would have to be like Reina or someone like that.
Yeah.
Cause like, okay, Achamomo does fine in 2 champions, but he's also playing with like a godlike AD carry.
Yeah.
Enti didn't look that great, and like Oteki is good, but not as good as like Art or Yutapon or Yutori Moyashi.
Yeah.
So I feel like Reina does a pretty good job given his situation. But if
Yeah. I mean,
not
you
that,
look at
then
the competition, right? Lago's been Medic's been Alley Cat's been so like
yeah.
who do you have left? You have Vivid and Gang.
Hmm.
Right? They both look good. I want to give Vivid the edge this year as my personal vote so far, simply because he's he's been lane dominant in ways that Gank hasn't quite been, and Vivid's also been. It's very clearly been Vivid and not Yutori Miyashi that's giving them this lane dominance.
Hmm.
So that's just where I would like to give a little bit of an edge to Vivid, but I
Yeah,
think it's pretty close.
I think Vivid is the better support overall. Like I feel like the things he does is more impactful on the team rather than Gang, which is kind of weird because they said they wanted a more dominant support, so they got Gang, which I feel like watching this season kind of shows that Vivid was the better option and
Mhm.
better player. Because when I watch like the warding or like, because I'm a support main, so I like to watch that sort of thing. I'm always watching the mini map instead of watching the big screen, and I see like Vivid's pathing, his like warding, some of the flashy plays he makes to help the team win out. And I don't see that much from Gang. Like he's not a bad support. He's still good, but that slight edge that makes him the best support in Japan. I think that Vivid wins out in that category just by like a decent margin, not a crazy margin, but a good enough margin where I can confidently say Vivid is the MVP.
Yeah. So I think we got a pretty solid list here of
Hmm.
our candidates, right, for all of the main positions. You got Evie, for jungle. You have Steel, I guess.
Steel.
For mid, for mid, Dasher and Luna, we'd both be happy with. ADC, Art and Utapone, we'd both be happy with. Support, Vivid has a small edge over Gang, but if Gang received it, I wouldn't be too upset about it.
Yeah, but
But
that
now we
yeah.
got some, yeah.
No,
Now we
I
got
agree.
two awards or that we have candidates for that are a little bit harder to measure. So the first one rookie of the split.
So this is rookie as in their first time in the LGL this season, like summer season. So your candidates are like Ray Farkey, Yuhi, uh who else am I missing? Am I missing someone? No, I am.
Medic and Lago.
Donshu
I
and
think are-
Armik. Or I
Yeah.
guess Medic.
Yeah. Unica, technically, I suppose, if you wanted to go down that route.
Oh yeah, that one game he was amazing. MVP candidate right there. One game against Steel.
There hasn't been that many rookies this split, or at least not any standout rookies like we had like last split. I thought it was pretty clearly Odugi was the rookie of the split.
Yeah.
This time, I think we're kind of in agreement. It's probably Ray Farkey.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Ray Farkey has been the most consistent. You can make an argument for Medic or Lago in a sense.
I'll be honest, I barely pay attention to Axe's game, so even if Lago was super sick, I honestly wouldn't really know.
The only thing I can say about Axis is that they're very good at vision control. Like if you look at their stats for vision wards or like wards placed or wards destroyed, they're one of the highest in the league. Like they buy like Smile, I think it said that Smile places 20 control wards per game on average, which I was like, what, really? I was like mind blown.
Wow.
Because I didn't really pay attention. I was just like cruising through, like, oh, they lost or whatever. But I went back and watched a few of the games, and their vision control is really good. So you can kind of say Lago is good in that sense. But it's like when your team is so bad and they can't do anything, it's hard to like notice how good of a player you are.
Yeah. Wow. That. Smile has a higher average control words per minute than a bunch of supports.
Yeah, he has the highest. I think he is the highest. Either him or Lago, right? One of those two.
Yeah, I mean, so Unica is technically the highest over his one game, but it's Lago, Medic, Achamomo, Vivid, and then Smile.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I would expect a lot of supports to be at the top of that, but Smile's super high in that.
They place a lot of wards aggressively, like trying to get vision control. Like their team is bad, so it doesn't really matter. But they are trying. They do have a decent vision control setup, so that's why. And it's also like Lago's warding is a little bit off at times because sometimes he doesn't get his gold set up until like 15 minutes into the game, and while the other support has it at 8 minutes or like 10 minutes. So there's like 5 minutes of him not warding because he doesn't have the support item completed. So that's why his stats kind of doesn't look as good at times. I feel, but like
that's very much a not like this.
Yeah, moment. It's like I was like, because I was watching their game studying, I was like, wait, why doesn't Axis have any wards down? I'm like, oh, their support that can't put wards down. And I was like, wait, what? It's 15 minutes. I was like so mad. I was like, this is like terrible.
Yeah.
Because I saw their stats. I wanted to really see. So I think they're pretty good. I mean, at vision control, that's their one shining light. Yeah. So I think you can give it to Ray Farkey.
We do have one more set of candidates we need to talk about for Coach of the Split.
Coach of the Split.
And last split, I was pretty confident that just like Odugi was the rookie of the split, I was pretty confident that Maple Street, I don't know if he's still watching at this point, but Maple Street was definitely my coach this split because he took a team that didn't have a whole lot on paper and not only took games off of every top team, but ended up getting fourth with was basically a bunch of rookies.
Mm-hmm. Bunch of no-name players Maple, as well.
Yeah, I can't give it to anybody on Sengoku this split because you look at what this team should have done, and they were nowhere close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's who would be your candidate? Because I actually have a hard time picking anyone.
Sure. So my candidates, and I'm not super sold on any of these, but I think they're all interesting to talk about, are CGA Ku.
Okay.
Burning Core 3-4.
Okay.
And V3 Huang.
Okay, that one is a kind of like a eye opener in my opinion, because I don't think V3 thinks Huang is the coach of the split, so I don't think. Why should I think that? They subbed him
really?
out
I
for a
don't
game, or they subbed him out this week.
really.
Yeah, Son was coaching, so that's why I
I
was
did
like,
not know about that. Was there like some health issues or something, or what's
no,
going on?
Han was there, but they just said that like we want to look at other pick ban options. That's why they lost to Axis and Sengoku. So like Twitter was like exploding, saying like, "Oh, Son's a terrible coach. How can you lose to Axis and Sengoku?" Then the next day they beat Crest, and they're like, "Oh, coaching problem. That was the issue. They're amazing." I'm like, "Did you guys forget about yesterday? Did you guys literally were yelling at this guy for being a terrible coach? Because win loss is obviously all the coach's fault." So I don't think
Yeah.
like just because I think Huang was coaching last split. Then they brought in like Baby, like a competent jungler and a better AD carry, and now they're like a playoff team. I don't think that it has anything to do with Huang, like, and also
Sure.
like Ku for the Crest Gaming. I feel like that would probably be the best candidate.
Yeah, he was my first like, oh, this probably makes sense, right?
Mhm.
Because I think for me, what I look at in a coach is they take the pieces that they have and they do better with the pieces than you would expect them to.
Yeah.
And I felt like those were the three teams that are just like on paper, I had lower expectations than what they're actually showing.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah, I like to see their player strength and where they ended up, and also like growth. Like, are they improving? That's why I don't think Kazu is a candidate, because yes, they are doing well, but there's no improvement with the team. Like the team is exactly the same as it was at the start of split and at the end of the split. They just have good
Yeah.
players and they're just still winning. So is that really like? I don't see that as a coaching thing. I just feel like
yeah.
at the start of the year they had one identity. At the end of the year they saw that one identity. So I wouldn't give it to them. 3-4. The only problem I have is like last split, Burning Core looked terrible with an all-star roster, and now they look decent with a bunch of like rookies. So it's like it's kind of like hard to like. Okay, so were the players like really bad? Like, I don't think Yutori Moashi is a bad player. I don't think Cog is a bad player. I don't think Mocha is like a terrible player. So like, what is going on? Like, they downgraded, but they improved, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. But if you look at the rest of the team, Sengoku is a dumpster fire. Unsold Stuff Gaming was a dumpster fire. Rascal Jester was always a dumpster fire, so that's fine. And so is Axis. So it's like, okay, they beat the two normal teams, and they also placed better than the other two teams, which was like a dumpster fire. So was that really 3-4 coaching? Was he able to just say, guys, don't be as bad as these other teams? Good luck.
Yeah.
So, and like you can't give it to like you can make an argument for Axis just because maybe their coach is doing a lot of the warding stuff. It's like I don't think that's coach of split worthy.
Maybe.
Rascal's Jester looks
Yeah.
terrible. I don't think that's coach of split worthy. USC is kind of looking better, but I don't know if the coach is doing anything. I feel like that's more Dasher.
Again, that's just like Dasher. Just
Dasher can be
doing his
coach of the
thing.
split if you want him to. He's able to lead his
Yeah,
team to
so-
victory. So
so
I'd
for
be
me,
fine
it's
with 2
definite-
or 3-4. I think those are the
It's
least
definitely
shitty.
not Ping 9. It's definitely not One-Ons. It's definitely
Mhm.
not Pumendu. It's definitely not Rahui. It's definitely not. Well, especially once I learned that there's subbing Huang out. It's definitely not Huang. It's definitely not Kazu. So that kind of leaves Ku in 3-4. And I feel like,
I think Ku is a little bit better.
Yeah.
If you just had to like
I mean-
pick one.
yeah,
think
I feel like
that's
Ku's
what it would
drafts
be.
have been consistently good.
Mhm.
And I feel like we're just watching CGA draft in general and how they've been performing. They're able to hide strategies a little bit better. Like when Kiana first came out, that wasn't something that I wasn't quite expecting. And Frank, I think Luna was the only one in Japan who had a lot of success on this character.
I think so. It might be the only
Right.
one with success with that character.
Um,
I don't remember all the stats or anything, but yeah, you could give
Okay,
it
so
to
it's been played
Ku or
by-
3-4, and I wouldn't be upset. But I think Ku is better overall.
Yeah, but again, I feel like this split's been very,
Yeah,
I guess it's this guy, right? You have Evie, Vivid, Ray Farkey, but like none of them are like, oh yeah, this was a great split for LGL. It was honestly kind of underwhelming in a lot of ways
Mhm.
so far, and it's not over technically, but the next 2 weeks just don't matter.
Yeah.
So
I wasn't as excited as I was for other splits. I don't.
yeah,
I feel like the bottom teams are just like terrible, and even the top teams at times are just like really one-dimensional or just really basic. Like there's, I don't know. 2020 is also like uninteresting for me, just because Rascal Jesters, Axis, Sengoku. There's no really like, or maybe Sengoku, but there's no really excitement value coming out. There's
Mhm.
nothing to look forward to.
yeah.
So yeah,
I think my big thing is we talked a little bit about how to improve it. I think we probably spend a little bit more time in our next episode since the
yeah.
regular season doesn't matter anymore. If there's
Right.
any interesting games, we'll talk about them. But I think next time we'll probably spend a little bit more time talking about what we think can be done to make LJL more interesting again.
Okay, that sounds good.
So
Because I think we've talked about everything, and I don't
yeah,
really want to go
everything we
into
wanted to.
detail right now. We still have 2 more weeks, so I guess after the 2 weeks we can wrap up the season. This week,
Yeah,
Dead Nation V3 is the only standout game. Besides
yeah.
that, it's like maybe they might troll an int like other teams. Pick like, I don't know,
Oh, I mean,
Sona Jungle
Maple
or
Street sent you
something.
a message. You
Oh
want
yeah,
to bring that up at all?
Maple said to watch Sengoku, but I just think he wants me to promote his team a little bit more. If Sengoku does something fun like the Lee Sin Jungle, okay, I'll watch. But I'm just gonna watch draft. If I don't see anything interesting from the draft or anything fun or creative, I'm gonna skip those games, like every game except for Dead Nation V3. And those are like my
Yeah.
final words. Is there anything you want to say before we head out? Because I think we're done for this
Um,
episode.
that's about it. I mean, thanks for tuning in, everyone, to Recall Japan once again. There's no more Academy playoffs for me to play, or Academy playoffs are happening, but I'm no longer involved, so I can't really have that to plug. So
Okay.
thank you for tuning in. Look out for more content from Kevin and Maria. Hopefully, I'll have an opportunity. I'm going to try and do another unofficial English broadcast this time around as well.
Okay.
So if you're interested in finding that, follow me on the Twitter. I don't know where it is. It's up a is
It's
it below?
below.
Below. Yeah, check that out. That's where I'll be announcing it if that's something you're interested in. But for now, I think that's about it.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. I think I might stream a few of the games or do VOD reviews, but unless if there's something interesting, I'll do that. If not, don't expect anything from me in the next week. But yeah, that's it. Okay. Thanks for watching. That was Recall Japan, and we'll see you next time. Bye.